Chapter 13. That Infernal Machine, the Pressure Cooker. Toward the end of June, when the cougar episode had cooled somewhat, Bob and I made several early morning pilgrimages to the abandoned farm and picked 5 gallons of wild blackberries, and the canning season was on. How I dreaded it! Jelly, jam, preserves, canned raspberries, black caps, peas, spinach, beans, beets, carrots, blackberries, loganberries, wild blackberries, wild raspberries, applesauce, tomatoes, peaches, pears, plums, chickens, venison, beef, clams, salmon, rhubarb, cherries, corn, pickles, and prunes. By fall, the pantry shelves would groan and creak under nature's bounty, and the bitter thing was that we wouldn't be able to eat 1/10 of it. Canning is a mental quirk, just like any form of hoarding. First you plant too much of everything in the garden, then you waste hours and hours in the boiling sun cultivating, then you buy a pressure cooker and can too much of everything so that it won't be wasted. Frankly, I don't like home canned anything, and I spent all of my spare time reading up on botulism. Bob, on the other hand, was in the thing heart and soul. He stepped into the pantry, which was larger than most kitchens, and exhibited pure joy at the row on row of shining jars. And I couldn't even crack his complacency when I told him that, although the Hicks were at the time using year before last canned beef, they were busily preparing to can another 150 quarts. Women in that country were judged not by their bulging sweaters, but by their bulging pantries. Husbands unashamedly threw open their pantry doors and dared you to have more of anything. I reminded Bob as I began hauling out jars, lids, sugar, and the pressure cooker that the blackberries of the summer before tasted like little nodules of worsted, and we still had 25 quarts. But he was adamant, and so, quote, "Hi-ho, and away we go," end quote. The summer canning was on. I crouched beneath the weight of an unsupportable burden every time I went out to the garden. Never have I come face to face with such productivity. Pea vines pregnant with bulging pods. Bean poles staggering under big beans, middle-sized beans, little beans, and more blossoms. Carrots with bare shoulders thrust above the ground to show me they were ready. Succulent summer squash and zucchini, where it seemed only a matter of an hour ago there were blossoms, and I picked a water bucket full of cherries from one lower branch of the old-fashioned late cherry tree that shaded the kitchen. There was more of everything that we could ever use or preserve, and no way to absorb the excess. I tried sending vegetables to our families, but the freight rates and ferry rates and time involved, plus the fact that Seattle has superb waterfront vegetable markets, made this seem rather senseless. I sent great baskets of produce to the kettles, but with Pa on the road every day, imploring the farmers to give him anything they couldn't use, even they had too much. I picked peas and took a shopping bag full to Mrs. Kettle and was embarrassed and annoyed to find 2 bushel baskets of them sitting on the back porch, covered with swarms of little flies and obviously rotting. There was no market for this access since the market gardeners supplied the neighboring towns. I became so conscience-stricken by the waste that of my own volition I canned 75 quarts of string beans, and too late noticed that the New Farm Journal carried a hair-raising account of the deaths from botulism from eating home-canned string beans. Bertie Hicks took all the blue ribbons at the county fair for canning. She evidently stayed up all night during the summer and early fall to can, for she would come to call on me at 7:15, crisp and combed, and tell me, as her sharp eyes noted that I still had the breakfast dishes and the housework to do, the baby to bathe and feed, and my floor to scrub before I can get at my canning, that she had just finished canning 36 quarts of corn on the cob, 25 quarts of tomatoes, 82 quarts of string beans, and a 5-gallon crock of dill pickles. She canned her peaches in perfect halves and stacked the jars like pictures in the canning book. They were perfectly beautiful but tasted like glue. She canned her tomatoes whole and they came out of the jars firm and pretty, but tasted like nothing. Mother had taught me to put a couple of pits and a little brown sugar with my peaches, plenty of clove, onion, and finely chopped celery with tomatoes. And anyway, I like the flavor of open kettle canned fruit and tomatoes. By the end of the summer, the pullets were laying and Bob was culling the flocks. With no encouragement from me, he decided that as chicken prices were way down, I should can the cold hens. It appeared to my warped mind that Bob went miles and miles out of his way to figure out things for me to put in jars, that he actively resented a single moment of my time, which was not spent eye to pressure gauge, ear to steam cock, that he was forever coming, staggering into the kitchen under a bushel basket of something for me to can. My first reaction was homicide, then suicide, and at last tearful resignation. When he brought in the first 3 cold hens, I acidly remarked that it wasn't the only cooker which operated under pressure. No answer. Later, because of my remark, he said that I did it on purpose. I didn't, I swear. But I did feel that God had at last taken pity on me, for the pressure cooker blew up. It was the happiest day of my life, though I might have been killed. A bolt was blown clear through the kitchen door. The walls were dotted with bits of wing and giblet. The floor was swimming in gravy, and the thick cast aluminum lid broke in two and hit the ceiling with such force it left 2 half-moon marks above stove. I was lyrical with joy. I didn't know how it happened, and I cared less. I was free. Free! F-R-E-E! After supper, as I went humming about the house picking pieces of chicken off the picture frames and from the mirror in the bedroom, Bob eyed me speculatively. Then he picked up the Sears Roebuck catalog and began looking for a bigger, quicker, and sturdier variety of pressure cooker.